Welcome to the Professional Development course, Title IX and Sexual Harassment, brought to you by Kiyomichi Tech's Workforce and Economic Development. In this video, we will cover Title IX, Sexual Harassment, Statistics, Sexism, Consent, Responding to Sexual Harassment, Scenarios. What is Title IX? No person in the United States shall, on the basis of sex, be excluded from participation in, be denied the benefits of, or be subjected to discrimination under any educational program or activity receiving federal financial assistance. When is Title IX applicable? Covers all educational activities and applies to all members of the academic community. Educational activities includes activities both inside and outside the classroom, including student activities, clubs, and organizations, some sex-specific organizations exempted. Applies to all institutions receiving any federal funding, public and private. Title IX is a gender equity law that prohibits discrimination based on any gender bias, not solely a women's rights law. What is sexual harassment? Sexual harassment includes unwelcome sexual advances, requests for sexual favors, and other verbal or physical harassment of a sexual nature in the workplace or learning environment, according to the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. Sexual harassment does not always have to be specifically about sexual behavior or directed at a specific person. For example, negative comments about women as a group may be a form of sexual harassment. Although sexual harassment laws do not usually cover teasing or offhand comments, these behaviors can also be upsetting and have a negative emotional effect. Both victim and the harasser can be either a woman, man and the victim and harasser can be the same sex. There are two types of sexual harassment. One is quid pro quo. This happens when employment or education decisions are based on a request for sexual favors. An example is this for that. 2 is creating a hostile environment. This happens when unwelcome conduct unreasonably interferes with an employee's ability to work or a student's ability to learn, or creates an intimidating, hostile, or offensive work or learning environment. What does sexual harassment look like? Sexual harassment can occur in a variety of circumstances. The harasser can identify as anyone and have any relationship to the victim, including being a direct manager, indirect supervisor, coworker, teacher, peer, or colleague. Some forms of sexual harassment include making conditions of employment or advancement dependent on sexual favors either explicitly or implicitly, physical acts of sexual assault, requests for sexual favors, verbal harassment of a sexual nature, including jokes referring to sexual acts or sexual orientation, unwanted touching or physical contact, unwelcome sexual advances, discussing sexual relations/stories/fantasies at work, school, or in other inappropriate places, feeling pressured to engage with someone sexually, exposing oneself or performing sexual acts on oneself, unwanted sexually explicit photos, emails, or text messages. Statistics for women. Millions of women in the United States have experienced rape. As of 1998, an estimated 17.7 million American women had been victims of attempted or completed rape. Young women are especially at risk. 82% of all juvenile victims are female. 90% of adult rape victims are female. Females ages 16 to 19 are 4 times more likely than the general population to be victims of rape, attempted rape, or sexual assault. Women ages 18 to 24 who are college students are 3 times more likely than women in general to experience sexual violence. Females of the same age who are not enrolled in college are 4 times more likely. Statistics for men. Millions of men in the United States have been victims of rape. As of 1998, 2.78 million men in the U.S. had been victims of attempted or completed rape. About 3% of American men, or 1 in 33, have experienced an attempted or completed rape in their lifetime. 1 out of every 10 rape victims are male. Statistics for you people. Ages 12 to 34 are the highest risk years for rape and sexual assault. Those age 65 and older are 92% less likely than 12 to 24-year-olds to be a victim of rape or sexual assault, and 83% less likely than 25 to 49-year-olds. 21% of TGQN, transgender, genderqueer, non-conforming, college students have been sexually assaulted, compared to 18% of non-TGQN females, and 4% of non-TGQN males. Statistics for workplace sexual harassment. Fall 2017. 70% of women/60% of men believe sexual harassment occurs in the workplace. 50+% of women have personally experienced sexual harassment in the workplace. EEOC Task Force on the Study of Harassment in the Workplace, 2017. 40% of women have experienced one or more specific sexually based behaviors, such as unwanted sexual attention or sexual coercion. Why isn't sexual harassment reported? Workers fear employer retaliation. One of the most common reasons why employees are dissuaded from reporting sexual harassment is because they fear what could happen if they do. Retaliating against an employee in any way for reporting such an incident is illegal, but that first requires the employee to be subjected to termination, demotion, or further harassment, physical violence, and other forms of mistreatment. Needless to say, employees may fear making their situation more complicated by reporting sexual harassment. Those who engage in sexual harassment are unlikely to stop, and an employer who allows the harassment to persist, or even retaliates against you, must be held accountable. Employees worry about their career aspirations. Second to retaliation may be an employee's concern that they'll ruin their chances for advancement in a company if they report sexual harassment. Employees may fear that reporting someone's behavior will mean they'll get passed over for promotions and blacklisted in their company for any kind of favorable transfer or advancement. There's no guarantee that an employer who is offended or annoyed by an employee's sexual harassment report will stagnate their career. Lackluster sexual harassment prevention training. Sometimes people don't report sexual harassment because they aren't aware until later, sometimes years later, that the treatment they experienced was abusive or even caused them post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. This can be the result of a company's deficient sexual harassment training program, which should otherwise clearly define all of the many ways sexual harassment occurs and is illegal. Many times, employees may be confronted with verbal harassment or something that is neither physical nor verbal, such as a gesture or being exposed to sexually explicit content at work. There are a number of ways in which sexual harassment negatively impacts employees who may not even be aware that the behavior is sexual harassment at all. Trauma and post-traumatic stress disorder. Everyone responds to sexual harassment differently, and it can be a very traumatic experience for many. So much so that those who experience sexual misconduct at work of any kind may develop symptoms of PTSD. When someone is so afflicted by mental stress from PTSD, they may be more focused on avoiding triggers for their trauma than holding responsible parties accountable. Responding to sexual harassment. Sexual harassment is unlikely to stop until confronted. In some cases, this may mean informing the person directly that his or her actions are offensive and unwelcome. Other situations may require an informal talk from a supervisor, a formal reprimand, or a disciplinary hearing. Make sure that anytime you must do this, it is documented in some way to keep track of all incidents. Once a responsible employee has either actual or constructive notice of sexual harassment or sexual misconduct, the school must act. Who is considered a responsible employee? A responsible employee includes any employee who has the authority to take action to redress the harassment, has the duty to report harassment or other types of misconduct to appropriate officials, or is someone a student could reasonably believe has this authority or responsibility. The school must take immediate and appropriate steps to investigate what occurred. The school must take prompt and effective action to stop the harassment, remedy the effects, Prevent the recurrence. Here are some scenarios to help you better understand what is and isn't sexual harassment. On April 27th, Amy Kraft, sophomore at a Polytech high school, sets up a time to meet with her chemistry teacher Mr. Casey for later that afternoon. Upon arriving for the appointment, Mr. Casey can see that Amy is very upset and looks exhausted. Mr. Casey asks if everything is okay, and Amy asks if she can close the door. Casey gets up, closes the door, sits back down, and Amy blurts out, "I think I was raped last weekend by another student, a friend of a friend named Todd." What should Mr. Casey do next? Take a minute to think about it. Mr. Casey should follow school procedure on reporting any crime that has occurred. Let the student know that you are here for them. Even if they don't want you to report it, you must follow procedure because you are a responsible employee. The vice principal frequently boasts about her sexual encounters in the workroom on Monday morning. Both Sam and Cass are uncomfortable being within range of hearing. Is this sexual harassment? Take a minute to think about it. Yes, this would be sexual harassment because it is creating a hostile work environment. Sam and Cass should ask the vice principal to stop and then bring the issue to administration's attention. Lee, a single male, is interested in Susan, a single female. He asks her out on a date. Is this sexual harassment? After Susan says no, Lee asks her at least once a week and begins to bring her gifts. Susan declines the date and the chocolate. Is this sexual harassment? Take a minute to think about it. No, a single act of asking a coworker out on a date, while not necessarily advisable, does not rise to the level of harassment. After the first no, any further attempts could be harassment if your coworker thinks it is creating a hostile environment. Claire keeps a provocative picture of her husband Jamie on her desk at work. Could this be sexual harassment? Rip sleeps with Beth on the promise of a promotion. Could this be sexual harassment? A student asks his teacher if she'd like a kiss, then pulls a piece of candy from behind his back. He wants to know where her wedding ring is. Is this sexual harassment? Take a minute to think about it. Yes, if the picture makes her coworkers uncomfortable, then it is creating a hostile work environment. Yes, having a sex with a subordinate on the promise of a promotion is quid pro quo and is sexual harassment. Yes, sexual innuendos and flirting between a teacher and a student is creating a hostile learning environment. This is sexual harassment.